your hand personally, since at the moment you're the only one here, but hopefully we have that chance to meet again in the future. The focus of my piece is really looking at how, sort of the methodology, in a sense, the teaching behind how we interact with people online and as facilitators. And so I had designed this short presentation with regional community of practice facilitators in mind, but many of the things I share also apply to folks who work with us as facilitators of our 4-week online courses. So perhaps in the future that might be something that we engage you on. So just know that it's a twofer, that these things are relevant in both contexts. I see Sachiko's joining us. Welcome, Sachiko. Catherine here. I'm just starting a brief presentation related to online facilitation and how you interact successfully. Perhaps both of you have already done some interacting as participants online, and I know in our training of trainers we also had an online component, and we did some exercises related to that. I thought what made sense now in nearly mid-December is to just recap some goals of the facilitator. And I'm sharing on the screen now a handout that was in our Moodle for the training of trainers. It's also one that Winnie sent out, and hopefully you can see it on the screen here. And it lists a few different goals of the facilitator. I don't know if you recall, but we had identified 5 of them, and the goals are shown in the right-hand column. And then it also spells out what the online facilitator is doing, and then examples of what a facilitator might say. So let's just maybe take a sort of quick review of that, and also talk in some general terms about what good practice is for engaging people. Actually, maybe I'll start with the general piece because we might have 1 or 2 trickling in. So in general, one really good thing to keep in mind is the participants that you're going to be meeting. So if you're leading a regional community of practice, that could be comprised of folks from one agency, but they could be also people from other agencies. In other words, people who don't necessarily know each other. And for the CalPro training, the first time they're engaging with you and possibly with each other is when they're invited to come online in the Moodle instance and start communicating, start reading materials, watching videos, start interacting with the material and with each other and with you. So given that, I think it's good to keep in mind it's really important to do your best to try and welcome people, ideally as soon after they arrive as possible, and to help them feel at ease. So, later in this hour, we'll be giving you more technical training on how you do different things in Moodle that Winnie will cover. But what I'm saying in my portion is really to think about the participants arriving, not knowing anybody, not knowing what to expect, how welcome it would feel if you, the online facilitator, was there pretty soon afterwards and was able to reach out to them, ideally in the same day they first posted. Welcome them, make some small talk, ask them about their context, who are their learners, what brings them to this course. Just a lot of it is sort of an ice-breaking activity and also a way to help them try to identify something in that initial phase that would really motivate them. What do they most want to get from this? The so-called pre-session assignments, the activities that they do before they meet face-to-face, are usually intended to really help them engage with each other, engage with the topic, in some case to tap background knowledge or find out more about them. And you can just help build the beginnings of an online community in your work with them. And one other a general thing I would suggest is that it's really good to call people by name. I mean, when we're sort of all faceless online, it can feel just a little bit anonymous, and so when you're speaking, when you're responding to somebody, it's helpful just even to use their name. Gosh, Marianne, that was a great suggestion you made about X, or tell us so-and-so more about Y, to try and have their names appear, and also to look for ways that you see commonality, because your goal, again, is just as you do in a face-to-face setting, your goal is really to help create a comfortable learning environment where people are engaged and feel at ease. And the last thing I'll say is probably you already experienced a bit of this when, with the training of trainers Moodle, we had you do different activities, and then when you online, and then when you got together face to face, you started to connect, like literally connect the faces to the names of people, but you already had some beginnings of a relationship with them, and so that's going to be the same sort of model for you when you're leading a regional community of practice. So those are just some general comments. In this hour-long meeting that we're having, it's a little lopsided in that either I will be talking or Winnie will be talking, but we encourage you to share questions, comments, reactions in the written chat pod here. So any questions that you have related to those sort of general opening comments before we look into more particulars? If you do, please post them in the little written chat there. Okay, so we've had a couple others join. Patty's joined us. Welcome. Sorry, Patty, Rebecca, and Sachiko. Great. So, so to take a quick look at this handout that we looked at before, the goals of the facilitator, we said, are to communicate, to encourage, to guide, to monitor, and to appreciate. There were 5 goals that we listed, and I know that you already do much of that when you work face-to-face with students, with your colleagues, with other professional development you might lead. So in the handout here, we showed in that opening line what the facilitator could do, the opening days, sorry, that the facilitator could do to introduce herself or himself and communicate effectively that way, to welcome participants into either the regional community of practice or the online course, whatever the product is that you're working with, and then to start encouraging people to continue more and talk about who's forming in the group, with the example here from Marty Rayo, who was a facilitator for the Integrating Contextualized Workforce Skills subject area. She was identifying people by program area and by agency team. The facilitator also reads the posting and can summarize information and guide the discussion. If there's any confusion over the purpose or objectives of the training, he or she can clarify there and generally sort of steers the direction of the discussion. So in the example here in the middle column, you see she's pointed out, with a question that somebody brings, that was a good question, we're going to explore that in depth in this regional community practice or this workshop, and then looks for patterns. If there's any concerns or questions that seem to emerge, she tries to summarize that and identifies them, and then explain what the regional community of practice, in your case on accelerated learning, will talk about and what it won't address. And there may be other CalPERS offerings that might address the other questions that they have. We'll see, and you can always ask us if you're not sure for other resources. The other main thing that the facilitator does is really look for common challenges and ask a lot of clarifying questions. It's so helpful for I think when we haven't met the people and we don't have the benefit of nonverbal, sort of body language telling us about their questions, it's really good to be able to clarify, did you mean X or Y? To ask those kinds of clarifying questions, ask for a little more detail. It also promotes engagement where people are, they know that you're interested, they know that you want to know more, and that your purpose as a PD provider, professional development provider, is really to help them learn and help them, teach a better class, lead a better program, depending on your audience. So, I won't spend a lot of time on this handout because it is something that we've seen before, but I wanted to jog your memory of a few things. So I think in the TOT you saw this as well. The online facilitator worked hard at making people feel heard and be responded to. So in the examples here, she mentions it's a good question. Can anybody else give an example of blah, blah, blah? I've read all these posts. It seems like some of us have a concern around blah, blah, blah. So people know that their points really mattered, and they're not feeling left out, and they also get the information that they came for. As I said, sometimes you may be able to recommend additional resources. One maybe sideline I'd like to mention on this is if it turns out that, we like you to always have, be able to draw on your own personal experience, give examples of things that you've experienced that's very similar to what we have sort of scripted in the facilitator guide. But if there's some online resource that you'd like people to look at, we would just ask that you shoot that over to us at CalPro so we can double check. And the purpose of that is that we really want the training to be consistent, to maintain the research basis, and to be consistent across the state. So, so if one of you has a great, 50-page PDF that you found on something or other, before you send it to your class, could you just send it to us? We'll take a quick look and then add it as a sort of additional resource. And it may be that it's something we feel is appropriate and would like to add overall. So you might be helping us find newer pieces that are out that we'd like to share. So, so what I'd like to do, it's about 12:15, and I promised to spend only the first part of this webinar chatting with you. What I'd like to do is give you a little chance to practice looking at how one facilitator managed amazingly in one single longish post online. She managed to kind of hit all 5 goals. And so I have a little practice activity I'd like us to do in a moment. And that one you haven't received already. We'll be looking at it together. But I think you may be able to see how the facilitator can communicate, can appreciate, can encourage others to use their own examples, integrate work from their classes into the professional learning class in this one post. So I'm going to switch screens, but not really topics. And I may need to make this bigger, but let me just kind of give you the overview. So I have the 5 goals listed on the top of this screen: communicate, guide, monitor, encourage, and appreciate. And then I have one passage, which I'll make bigger in just a second. So this is excerpted from kind of a really big community of practice that is about evidence-based reading instruction. I'm just going to see if I can get, I don't know if I can get 200, will probably be too big. Okay, so let me just go up to 150%. Also there's a way to make this full screen, but because we'd like you to be able to think about this in the, and communicate in the chat pod, we will at this point not recommend that you go make your screen bigger. So maybe we'll do a little of this together, and then I'll give you some time to just read it quietly, and then we'll look at what you think. So in this case, in the very first sentence, focusing on vocabulary instruction, this professional learning, this community of practice facilitator, whose name is Elizabeth Griffin, wrote to her participants, "I've been reading your comments with great interest. Most of you have done the vocabulary assessments and are now trying out vocabulary instruction using the techniques and activities presented at the last session. I commend you for moving forward and trying to apply and practice what you've learned. Since you are in the guided practice part of your learning process, I'd like to offer a few comments to give you some feedback." So if you analyzed what she's doing, you might note that even in the very first sentence, the facilitator indicates she's been monitoring people's discussions. And she does it in a way that's, pleasant and encouraging. She says, "with great interest." And in the next sentence, she says, "I commend you for moving forward." So there's that encouragement we want to have. Of those goals, communicate, guide, monitor, encourage, appreciate. In the first paragraph, do you see anything else that that might be a goal that might be served? In other words, is she able to hit those goals by any other words in the first paragraph? So if you see a goal that's being addressed by her comments in paragraph 1, can you just write the goal, guide, monitor, appreciate, communicate, or encourage in the chat? See, Angela's typing. And welcome, Elaine. I didn't get to say hi to you, but we're glad you're here. Okay, so Patty suggests encourage is there when she starts with, "I commend you for moving forward." Totally agree. Sorry, I was reading two of those at once. So encourage, allowing yourself to make mistakes and learn from them. And Angela's noting the encouragement in "I commend you for moving forward." Sachiko, you see all of them? Almost all of them. Appreciate, encourage, guide, and monitor. Okay. So she sets a really great tone even in that very first paragraph, and she actually manages to serve a lot of those goals, reach a lot of those goals. Let's take a look at the second paragraph. First of all, and the print is tiny, so I'll just, I think for the sake of time and your eyes, I'll read aloud quickly. "First of all, your experiences are normal. Rome wasn't built in a day. This well-worn cliché reminds us that it takes time to change and create something new. I remember visiting Guillermo's class when he received his EBRI, Evidence-Based Reading Instruction training. It took him a significant amount of time to put all the pieces together and in a way that allowed his lessons to flow with ease and clarity. He was learning along with his students. However, with practice and patience, he became very good at delivering vocabulary instruction. But it didn't happen in a week or even several weeks after his training. It's a process. So be patient and kind to yourselves. Allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from them. I know of no one who's gone out and done everything perfectly the first time around." So in that paragraph, can you name the goals that you see Elizabeth is meeting? Sachiko, you're right. Really telling people that they're not going to be these brilliant reading instructors with this totally different way of teaching reading overnight. And Angela, right? She's monitoring. She's been showing how she was following up with Guillermo in particular. I think in this case, Guillermo is it might have been at that point a co-facilitator, but he started out in the training and was her student, if you will, participant. And Elaine, you're right. She's guiding and encouraging people to be patient, and she's monitoring, gives an example of how she's monitoring. Okay, let's go on. Secondly, presenting the meanings of the words is not truly a, quote, discussion. It's a structured activity with the teacher presenting examples and then using prompts, structured questions, to elicit student responses. Just even in that much, what would you say of the goals? Monitor, communicate, guide, encourage, appreciate. What do you see? Yep, she's guiding. I think she's also communicating. She's just telling people how, some facts about vocabulary instruction, right? Okay. Great, Elaine, thanks. And then she goes on, Elizabeth goes on. In the final, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. She says it takes time to present the meaning effectively and efficiently to ensure that this part of the lesson doesn't go on too long. So really, again, communicating that here are the facts about how this works in order to work well. Okay. I'd like to take just another couple minutes and look at each of the remaining pieces. So the next paragraph, another thing to keep in mind is that vocabulary activities are sequenced. The fill-in requires less cognitive skills than the critical thinking. Activities meant to span 4 or 5 meanings. So what would you say she's doing here? Guiding, communicating, encouraging, what do you see? Right? Sachiko, guiding. Yep, Elaine. And also communicating in the sense of kind of reporting the facts, giving directions about how to do that, right? Okay, good. And then if we jump ahead to the next paragraph, many of you mentioned during the reading passage with the, many of you mentioned using the reading passage with the vocabulary words. That activity is best presented after the students have had a few days of practice working with the words. If you're using words to learn by, the reading passage questions may use derivatives of the words, word families. And then she says, as we explained during the session, derivatives need to be taught and practiced before they're used. Good. So I think she's doing more guiding and communicating here. Patty, you say monitoring. She noticed many of you mentioned, so she's indicating to us how much she's paid attention to what they said, right? Monitoring what they said. Good. Okay, and the last bit, I congratulate each of you for moving out of your comfort zone and trying new techniques and new activities. I look forward to seeing you this coming Friday. What do you see happening there? For sure, appreciating and encouraging. Yep, yep, and communicating. So this is a really long, thoughtful response. Not every facilitator is going to write such a long response every time, but I chose it because it's just a beautiful frame for how, in an ideal world, you would be able to reach many of your goals. It is, Angela, extremely long, and we don't all have time to sit and write multiple paragraphs, but you can pick up even threads of this. In other words, you don't need to write as much, but you can still offer some guidance, some encouragement, communicate some basic facts, and do it in a more brief manner. So it's a model. It's not the only way you can do it, but it's a good reference for you, as is the other handout, which has many shorter phrases that give you examples. So it's close to my time to wrap up my portion of it. I'd just like to ask if you have other questions. Give feedback using video. Sachiko, you mean when you're training online? And I mean, you could. I'm going to ask either Winnie or Sudi, who's on the call, if there's any reason technically, besides lack of knowledge of how to do it, is there any reason that we wouldn't want somebody to use video? Because of course that is very personal and it allows you to say a lot in just a minute, whereas typing would take a long time, or audio. We've experimented with that, but I'll be quiet and let someone, Sudi or someone, speak.
This is Sudi Whalen. I'm the online course coordinator for CalPro. You can use video and audio. The thing is, you want to make sure that you're using a video or audio that is an MP3 or MP4 format. And the reason for that is we do have a lot of participants who are working in corrections, and they can't access a lot of things that are outside of Moodle. So we want to make sure that it's either something that's on YouTube that you can embed in because we know they can view it, or that it's an embedded MP3 file or MP4 file. Otherwise, all participants won't be able to access it.
Okay, and I just popped that into the chat. Okay, other questions or comments? Okay. Well, I will be on the call for the remainder of this time, and I'm going to hand over to Winnie, although I do have a meeting that I have to lead that starts at 1, so if you have other questions beyond the next half hour, I encourage you to just get in touch with me directly, and I'll pop my email address and telephone number into the chat pod. Okay, Winnie, thank you. Please carry on.
Thank you, Catherine. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen with you while I'm logged into Moodle and access a couple of the hotspots or places that you'll want to be most familiar with. So I'll just go ahead and start now and share my screen. Just let me know or let us know in the chat if you have any visibility issues. If you need something to be zoomed in, I'll try to get as close as possible. Hopefully that helps. So one of the first areas in Moodle that you kind of set up with if you're new, not all of you, some of you may already be familiar and have profiles set up, but just for the sake of the recording and anyone who's not yet familiar, just setting up your profile is a good place to start. It's always accessible in the top right corner right beside your name, and this photo is something that you can add to customize your profile. So your main profile page will look like this in edit form. When you get into the further edit settings, you'll just click here. You'll see some basic fields of your account information. You can update your city, email address, I believe, and here in the description is where you can put a brief bio just to let us know a little bit about you, get the participants familiar with you and what you do, what your background is, and your user picture can be updated right here. So you can drag or drop an item here. You can also just click the Add File icon and really simple, choose and then upload right here. And anything else you want to customize with a website or additional information, I think there's additional namespace, interests and tags, maybe ESL, ABE, something like that. Web page, continual list of other IDs you can put in here. And then you'll just update it. So that's something that's good to just start off with. And you can always get back to the main page by looking at the top menu here and click Dashboard. So I'm going to leave. I'm not going to save any of that. But today, I thought we would look at an archived course, so something that's not active that we can really dig into and take a look at. So when you're looking for the course that you are enrolled in as a teacher or facilitator, or if you're enrolled as a participant, it'll always be in the same area, the course overview section. And the default setup for Moodle will place it here below your calendar. You can customize the page if you want, although I think if you're getting used to Moodle still, leaving it this way is probably the best way to go. So your course titles will be right here, and you'll just click to enter. And so just looking overall at what's here, as the teacher, you should be able to see all of the activities, whether or not the participants have view of them. And we are in a COP. So it's a little bit different than an online course structure, but fairly similar, just in the succession of materials and layout of activities. So the first thing that a lot of participants see when they first have access to the course or the training area is the first couple of forms here that come before the pre-session activities. And the news forum is a good way to sort of introduce yourself and to the participants and let them know, like, hey, welcome to the course, and just kind of give them a general greeting. This is a good place to do that. You won't get replies to them here. This is only for administrators, either like myself or anyone else on the CalPro staff team, or for a facilitator like yourself. So when participants click on the discussion that you've posted, they won't have the option to reply. Only we will have that option. So this is more for general announcement, so it won't be a place for discussion. But back into other activities, these below and more prevalent, and what we talked about earlier, the Getting to Know You forum, this is an area where we encourage the participants to introduce themselves, and perhaps where you can make the first post to get a full introduction out to the participants so that they have an example, of what's being written, and just start the conversation. So you'll see that there are quite a few participants here, and to access each person's individual post, you'll just click on the discussion title. And everyone will have this option in here to reply. There's no need to rate any of these. That's more specific to assignments within forums, but this is just a general forum. So yeah, this is where you can also post in-forum activities like we mentioned before, any resources. Checking in with CalPro about which resources are being posted is a good idea first. So if there's anything lengthy, I'll just note this now. There's a space limitation. I believe 2 megabytes is the largest file size Moodle allows for upload. So just consider links as an alternative option as well. And as I mentioned before, this menu here at the top is pretty useful for navigating in and out if you don't want to just jump back or through your browser hit back a bunch of times. So to get back to the activity and out of this post, I can click here. And just to get back to the course in general, I'll click here. And one reference I'll make that's in a handout in the assignments, I believe it's called Moodle Assignments handout. There is a screenshot of what it looks like when there is a notification of a participant posting in a forum. So pretty much in every forum activity, there will be a notification that goes out to you as the facilitator, and it will also go out to any participant that leaves that activity checked with their subscription. There should be an option for them to mark that they want the subscription. So discussion subscription is a checkmark option available to all participants and obviously to the facilitator as well. And this just means that they will get an email directly sent to them from Moodle notifying them of that post. Then you will also see in the handout for Moodle assignments, there will be a screenshot showing you what the notifications look like on Moodle. So beneath each forum title, there will be a notification listing, 3 forum posts, 3 unread posts. And the same goes for anything that has an activity attached. It'll let you know that there's a submission made that requires grading. And that segues into the next topic. So I'm going to move out of this, and I'm just going to go ahead and start with what assignment grading is like in Moodle. If anyone has any questions or wants me to slow down, let me know. And so because we're in a COP, there aren't as many assignments as there would be in an online course, per se. So I'm going to go into a face-to-face session. A face-to-face session is treated somewhat similarly to an assignment that would need verification of completion, or what Moodle calls a grade. So for face-to-face sessions, you're essentially marking attendance. The way that we've structured it in Moodle is to mark complete or incomplete, basically just were they there or not. So there are a couple ways to get started when you're grading an assignment. You can click on the assignment directly like I did when you're in the course, and this will show you can jump back out over here if you want to re-navigate, if you want to reorient yourself and look at the different assignments. But clicking on the assignment directly, sorry about that, meant to click on face-to-face. When you click on that assignment directly, that will take you to the space where you can grade at the bottom. So you can start by selecting grade, and this will take you into the grader area. So this is pretty much what it looks like for each individual person. So when you're looking at the different options, you'll see that first you have a selection of users. These are all of the participants that are enrolled. So we can just start by selecting someone. And for this screen, you can modify it a little bit. I personally, when I'm grading, I like to modify the perspective at the bottom here. You can collapse this review space to the left and only really allow this space to be, the main space. So you pretty much just want to select from the drop-down complete or incomplete, especially for attendance. There's only 2 options really. The other ones you can kind of disregard. And there's a feedback option as well. So if you do want to communicate, send a message, you can feel free to attach it to that. And when it saves, it will notify the participant, and they'll receive that message in their notification on Moodle as well as an email, I believe. So once you're done making that change, just hit Save Changes. And when you want to get back out, rather than going back in your browser, you can go back to I'm going to leave this because I'm not making any changes, but you can get back to the assignment itself and grade that way as well. You can go to View All Submissions to get a master list, and this will show you all of the participants. So one thing that is not in the handout, but it'll be revised and resent to you at the end of this. At the bottom of this participant list, in order to grade quickly and just have easy access, all you need to do is check this option for quick grading. So if you have a list in front of you that you've written down for your face-to-face session of who was there, all you really need to do is select quick grading to get access to everyone's status, to reset and do everything all at once, and then just save all. So that's another easy way, especially for attendance rather than assignment verification. That could be handy for you. And
if I can just butt in really quickly.
Sure.
I do want to point out that if you're doing this for an online course and a participant does not meet requirements of an assignment and you mark it as incomplete, always, always, always give them feedback. Don't just mark it as incomplete and not tell them what they missed or what was not taken care of.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Sudie. Yep, so utilizing the feedback comments, especially when there's something wrong or incorrect, definitely make use of specific instruction to give to that participant so they know exactly what to do to resubmit their assignment or correct something on an assignment they've submitted. It's a good point. So let's see. Another way to kind of get a view of your participants and what's going on is in the main course space. So I'm going to leave this area. I'm going to go back to the main course space. Another way to kind of gain an overview of your users and how active they are is to look at the left side of the course space and look in the people block and click on participants for a master list again. This one will include their last access to the course, which I think is pretty helpful within the first 2 weeks if you're kind of wondering who is the most active in the pre-session assignments and maybe who's going to need the most help within another week or so, who's going to be reaching out to you directly, asking questions, or who's going to be, needing extra support. This is a good way to do that. So you can just sort the list by most recently active to least, and you can see the people who never have enrolled, and these are people who sometimes do enroll in a course and end up just either not participating or having to drop out for some reason. But getting a view of the participants this way I think is helpful, just so you're not individually looking at everyone's activity but can see it all at once. Another function from the participant block, that area, is by selecting these users, particular users, or all, if you want to send a message, go ahead and check who you want to send that message to by choosing from this drop-down. Click Send Message. I'm going to choose myself just as a sample. And this could be anything. This could be for those who haven't completed an assignment yet. The due date's passed, but they've been pretty active so far, so you're just reaching out to them. The select users that you've chosen to reach out to. Type your body in here. You can make slight edits, format your text by emboldening it, making a different color if you want to alert them to a message in particular. And then sending. So it'll confirm all of the selected users you've had. If there's someone you've added in mistakenly, you can click Remove for that user. You can preview your message before sending. Pretty straightforward and pretty simple. I do think participants are sometimes a little bit more aware of messages that come to them in Moodle when they're actively in the course. So it's a good way to reach out to them aside from actual, direct emails. I think it's nice to have everything kind of in one environment. So let's see, aside from the direct messaging and activity, another thing to be on the lookout for that you might find helpful, I'll jump back to the regular main course space, are the activity completion reports. So if someone's having trouble completing an activity, or if you're just not really sure what's going on with someone in an activity, it's good to get an idea of which, area they've struggled in, or when they exactly, when they stopped working on that assignment or what's going on. So if you open reports in the administration block, you'll see a list of reports. I think the one that you'll want to look at most frequently is just the activity completion. And similar to the participant list, you'll get a master list of everyone enrolled, and you'll get their status for each activity. So the checkbox beside each activity is completion. And for those who maybe, you can see here, this person has completed one of our pre-session activities, but hasn't really followed through with any of the pre-session or pre-face-to-face work, but actually did attend both face-to-face sessions. So this person would unfortunately not be technically completing the COP and may end up having questions. So it's a good idea to just look at that and see who's completing what, get an idea of who's going to maybe be reaching out to you directly for assistance or general questions. So the few handouts that are provided in the layout that we're on right now that you will want to reference later, things that we just went over, sending direct messages to your participants, accessing their recent activity, and the Moodle assignments and how you go about grading them or verifying completion. Are there any questions, or does anyone have anything that they'd like to see?
Winnie, is all this in these handouts that are available to download in the box right here under your pictures?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, so they're labeled sending message to participants, accessing participant activity, and Moodle assignments. Have our own Moodle shell set up. Yeah, so it sounds like, yeah, Patty, when courses are initially set up, they are created by our content, person here, our course coordinator, for either the COP or online courses. The content is input into Moodle and set up with all the settings, activated, so there's nothing you need to be worried about with any of the course, shell. If there are any issues, though, sometimes there are links that are, not active or something that doesn't show. You'll just want to keep an eye out and just let us know. But other than that, we pretty much take care of that entire process. Yeah, no problem. Well, I can transition to the Q&A layout. Unless anyone wants to see something demonstrated on the screen share, I'm happy to do that as well. Practice. Yeah, what we can do, I believe, is set up sort of like a dummy version of a course so that you can actively participate as technically your role would read as teacher, but as we call it, facilitator. We can do that. We can set up a dummied version of either a COP or online course so that you can view the activities and look at, how to respond and what your role might be like more, firsthand, the technical piece. We can definitely do that. I guess I'll coordinate that with Catherine and see which one is most suited as the best sort of sample course for you guys. But yeah, let's definitely do that.
It is good with any technical training to be able to practice it soon after you did the training. We will give you the handouts, and this is being recorded, so you can always refresh your memory when it comes closer to your actual teaching time. And somebody asked about access to the real McCoy. Yes, depending on what it is, whether it's a regional community of practice or an online course, we give you some weeks advance access to it so you could refresh your skills then also if there's a lag between this training and when you actually deliver the training.
Yeah, so another piece I didn't really mention, at the beginning of an either COP or course setup, we enroll our facilitator at least a few weeks in advance so that they have a chance to look through everything, and we'll also confirm assignment due dates with you. And that way we can also communicate very clearly which assignments will require grading, which ones are going to be more self-completed activities, kind of like the Getting to Know You forum. In this assignment, in order for it to get a check mark of completion, the participant will pretty much need to just make one post. Some others will require one post by the participant and 2 responses to 2 other participants in order for the activity to register as complete. But before the course begins, we'll let you know exactly which activities you need to grade and you'll want to look out for versus the ones that will self-complete that you'll mostly monitor and respond to, for encouragement. Yeah, Sachiko, you're right. So there are some resources or more informational activities that are sort of just given to them for further, guidance or just more resources that they can check off themselves. And the difference between that and a regular activity, this box here is perforated. This will indicate to you and to us as admins that this is something that needs to be completed by the participant completing a series of actions. And anything that is a solid checkbox, that means that they can self-complete the item and that they will check it themselves to move on from it and register that activity as complete.
And I think in both
No
cases,
problem.
the check boxes, whether they're ones that they complete or we complete, are aimed at helping people persist and helping them track. With an online environment, sometimes it's harder to keep track of what's due when. And although we do our best to make that very clear with the layout and so on, this is just another tool to help with the sort of the tracking and the motivation both.
Definitely.
Patty,
Looks like...
yeah, you asked about whether we're staying with Moodle. Just a big picture. We aren't switching, but also we at CalPro are the beneficiaries of our good relations with our sister leadership project, OTAN, and they provide the platform, the server for both Moodle and Adobe Connect. So we do what they do. We follow them. And so as long as OTAN stays with Moodle, I think we're with Moodle. And if they make a switch to something else, then we'll go with that. It's a good, I'd like to say symbiotic relationship. It's certainly helpful for us to be able to help the field this way and not duplicate services.
So I'll just switch over here to our Q&A layout. Just let me know if there's anything that you'd like to see demonstrated in the screen share, and I can
To
do that.
answer Angela's question, that is something that Catherine and I were discussing, is doing something at a later date that's specific to Adobe Connect, because our online facilitators have to use it. But if we don't get to it before the course you're facilitating this spring comes up, then myself and Winnie will give you a training and we'll help you get acclimated to it. Oh, and so the answer to your question is yes, we will utilize Connect.
Sachi, I'm curious if you're liking, how are you liking Canvas? Thanks, everyone. I appreciate your feedback. One thing I learned, though, when we were initially starting with Moodle was that free is never really free because there's a lot of cost to supporting a product like this. So it's hard to switch once you're invested in one and you've invested in the server and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's good to be thinking, forward-looking.
Yeah, and just to one last thing, we're always, or I guess I would be always happy to spend time individually with any new facilitator so that they do get enough time in Moodle and in Adobe Connect before they ever host anything officially before a course or COP goes live. So you can always feel free to reach out to me if you want to spend some time. We can do a screen share session similar to today. I am still in the process of creating more process documentation to share. So whatever is helpful, you know, I'm always available to coordinate that.
Thanks, Winnie, and that's really true. There is a lot of support here for you. So you're not going to remember everything that we talked about today 6 months or 8 months from now when you start doing a COP. So Winnie's there. Part of her job is to be there to support you, and she's great at that. So your questions can be answered. You have access to really all of us and a great pool of experience. And also, there'll be things that go wrong, most likely. We've resolved a lot of issues, so there's a lot less things that go wrong than there were initially. But, you know, with any kind of technology, sometimes there's things that aren't quite what we're expecting them to be, and so you just give us an email or a call, and we'll get them fixed.
Catherine, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Winnie.
I was just going to say, if there's anything that we wanted to close with, I just wanted to let you guys know that we have provided an evaluation link. It's just in the box below the handouts. If you want to access you know, the evaluation to mark your thoughts or feedback for this webinar, you can do so there.
Okay, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you, Catherine and Winnie, for providing the information, and Sudi, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Marion, before we close, I don't know if anybody needs instructions how to download those handouts from that little pod. Or we're going to follow up with them by email. So, well, right? If you haven't already, you can click on each one of those handouts and then click on the download file. It'll
sometimes it opens a window in your browser and you have to download it from there. So look around after you click on that download if it seems like nothing happened, because there might be a window open somewhere behind this meeting window.
And Marion, they can download them all at once by clicking one handout, hit Control A, which is select all, and then select download file, and it'll download them all as one.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well,
We
I
learn new things
today.
every day.
Yes, Angela, we can email them to you as well. You're welcome. Thank you guys all for being here, and thank you, Catherine and Winnie.
Sure, we're delighted that we have more seasoned facilitators joining our ranks with this new module, and hopefully with online courses also in the future. So thank you so much for your dedication.
Thanks, everybody. I'll go ahead and send a follow-up email with the attachments, and feel free to respond to me with any questions you may have.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.